So shortly after this terrible event happened, I was contacted by Shane, who wanted to just explore his legal rights as to what had happened. He knew that the household that his son had been placed in was a very dangerous environment, that the social workers with Tulare County Child Welfare Services were aware that it was a dangerous environment, but proceeded to put him there anyway. So that was where our investigation began. Over the last 6 months or so, we've been gathering records in order to substantiate what we thought to be true, that they knew that that environment was dangerous for Nicholas, but proceeded to put him there anyway. There's no indication that the social workers involved in Nicholas's case after he was detained from Alyssa and Shane ever put their eyes on that home, which is what the law requires. And so after we got the records, we proceeded to file what's called a claim form with Tulare County detailing these facts. And although the law allows Tulare County to accept such a claim, they have rejected it. And once they gave us that rejection, that allowed us to then file a lawsuit, which is what brings us here today. And so the substance of the allegations are that even though the law required them to do a home environment assessment of that Goshen house, they failed to do so. And then with respect to the sheriff's office, they kind of had the last clear chance to prevent this tragedy. They were there 13 days before this horrific event, and Alyssa was there as well. And they saw a home with methamphetamine, meth pipes, body armor, AR rifles with no, serial numbers on them, and just all sorts of red flags. And even though the law requires them to report to Child Welfare Services this dangerous environment for Alyssa, they failed to do so. And if they had just done that, this tragedy could have been prevented.
Now, you know that they saw that by the documents?
That is correct. Yes, the documents in our possession established that Alyssa was there that night with all of the paraphernalia and the guns and bullet holes in the walls, and they just did nothing. They couldn't be bothered to, and all they had to do, all the law requires of them to do, is to pick up the phone and let Child Welfare Services know. And they didn't do that. They couldn't be bothered.
Have you received any answer from the Tulare Sheriff's Department yet as to how that could happen?
No, there's been no indication. We saw after this horrific event that they were out there in the press talking about this case. Lots of press conferences, lots of patting themselves on the back for. I will agree they did a good job apprehending the perpetrators, but not once did they acknowledge that they had the opportunity to prevent this. And so now we're going to be having to hold them accountable for that.
Did you indicate that it was not just the Tulare Sheriff's Department you are recognizing for falling short here, but also social services, those who may have been out there before the Sheriff's Department went and checked that out?
Correct. Yeah. So these are two separate agencies, both with Tulare County, that had multiple opportunities to prevent this tragedy. Child Welfare Services first. They saw when Nicholas was born, they saw a child raising a child. They saw Alyssa, who did not have the means to care for Nicholas, and so he was taken in protective custody. And thereafter, Alyssa, for her credit, worked hard to try and get her son back. But the one thing that she could not provide him was a safe and stable home environment. Ultimately, Nicholas was reunified with Alyssa at that Goshen household, even though it was no place that that child should be. Neither of them should have been, but it was allowed to happen anyway.
Now you said you have not received any communication from the Tulare Sheriff's Department, but the Tulare County Child Welfare Services also no response to anything you've asked about regarding this.
Nothing. We did file the claim. We've detailed the allegations that are in the press release and in the complaint. They are fully aware of what it is that we are doing here as part of this lawsuit, and nothing but silence.
That because it's very early in this claim announcement process, or why would you think that that's the case?
Well, I mean, I think right now they're trying to figure out their own strategy. And I think that they know that there are systemic issues with child welfare services in particular. It wasn't just that long ago that there was a claim involving a 10-month-old infant that settled for over $30 million because they allowed that child to nearly starve to death. And our investigation shows that there are, including Nicholas, 7 other infants that have died or nearly died in their care in the last 3 years. So clearly something is going on with Tulare County Child Welfare Services that is problematic and endangering the lives of the most vulnerable amongst us.
Now, in this lawsuit, is there a dollar figure affixed to this claim at this point?
Uh, no, right now, so we are seeking monetary damages. That's just what our civil justice system, allows. But we are going to be looking for opportunities for change to see if we can prevent something like this from happening again. It's not that big of an ask to have these social workers go and put their eyes on a home before they place a child there. They didn't do it here. The law requires them to do it. We don't know why they're not complying with the law, but we are going to hold them accountable for this failure and try and prevent it from happening in the future. But in terms of what Shane is seeking as part of this lawsuit, it's the lifetime of love and companionship and support of his beloved son.
In terms of the documents you have seen and gathered so far, is there any indication as to how they address those findings upon inspection of that home? I mean, they saw them, as you said, the document, they saw them, identified them. Was there any mention at all about the in context about what they may represent?
So all we know right now is that about 4 or 5 months, and this is in the complaint, that they did a background check on certain individuals in the Goshen household, which showed just just the longest list of crimes: street terrorism, gang affiliation, drugs, and weapon charges. So they knew that there were problematic individuals living in that household, and then nothing was done with the information. It just was apparently either forgotten or deliberately withheld for whatever reason. They were put on notice that there were active gang members in that home and just did nothing.
All right, what happens next?
So what happens next is we got to hold the people who had their eyes on Alyssa or had their eyes on Nicholas accountable. And so that's going to happen through depositions. We're going to have face-to-face conversations with these individuals. We're going to see what they were emailing to themselves and amongst themselves throughout this time period. And ultimately, if necessary, we'll go and put this in front of 12 members of the community and have a trial. And we will put them accountable there in front of the community.
And at this point, I understand that next hearing then is set for December 6th.
Correct. Yes. So that'll be when we determine the trial date. That'll be when all the parties are represented, most likely by lawyers, and we will be working up the case up until that point and through it.
Do you anticipate anything developing between now and then, and anything particularly happening?
Well, certainly the depositions will be revealing, hearing why these people could not be bothered to do their jobs, the sheriff's office and the social workers. So that'll be the main development between now and then.
Please get back to us and let us know once you have the depositions, if there's anything else you can talk about regarding your findings. I don't know the status, if you free to speak about it or not, but love to hear about it.
Absolutely, we'll do.